Welcome to another deep dive. You ready to get into some market research today? Looks like you're about to make some serious moves, judging by the stack of sources you sent over.
Yeah, it's definitely a crucial topic.
I'm seeing textbook excerpts in both Norwegian and English, plus
Yeah.
some presentation slides.
Someone's been doing their homework.
Okay, so let's jump right in.
Yeah.
One of the first things that jumped out at me from the sources you provided was this quote from Henry Ford.
Oh, yeah.
If I had asked people what they wanted,
Okay.
they would have said faster horses.
Yeah, that's a classic.
What do you think he was getting at there? Is it always a good idea to just ask customers what they want?
I think that quote perfectly illustrates the limits of simply taking customer requests at face value.
Okay.
Sometimes the most innovative solutions come from understanding needs that customers themselves might not even be aware of.
So they don't even know what they want, necessarily.
Right, exactly.
Like, think about it.
Yeah.
Before the iPhone existed, did anyone walk around saying, I need a pocket-sized computer that can also make calls and play music?
Yeah, not really.
Probably not.
It's more about understanding needs that they can't quite articulate.
Right, they're not even aware of them.
Exactly.
So it's about like digging deeper, right?
Yeah.
Figuring out what people actually need, even if they can't really articulate it themselves.
That's a great way to put it.
Like get into their heads.
And that's where a robust marketing information system, or MIS, comes in.
Yeah.
It's more than just collecting data. It's about processing, interpreting, and making that information actionable.
So it's not just about sending out a survey and calling it a day.
Not at all.
You need more
You need more.
to make the information useful.
Right. It's like having a constant feedback loop, gathering information, analyzing it, making decisions based on it, and then refining your approach based on the results.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of an ongoing process.
So tell me more about how this MIS actually works.
Sure, a good MIS involves gathering data from a variety of sources, both internal and external.
Internal and external.
Yeah.
Okay, can you give me some examples of, like, what kinds of information would fall under each of those categories?
Sure, so internal information could be your sales records, customer feedback forms, website analytics.
Gotcha. So, like, stuff from inside the company.
Exactly. Basically anything that gives you insights into your own operations and customer interactions.
Makes sense. So what about external information?
External information is all about the bigger picture.
Okay.
It could be industry reports, competitor analysis, market trends, even what people are saying about your brand on social media.
Oh, wow. So it's really about, like, the whole landscape that the business is operating in.
Right, understanding the context in which your business operates.
Hey, I'm starting to see how these pieces kind of fit together.
Yeah.
So the MIS is like the central nervous system, would you say?
It is. Yeah, you can think about it that way.
And then the market research is how you gather the information that kind of feeds into it.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
So market research is all about systematically gathering and analyzing information to answer specific questions about your target market.
Okay.
Now, there were two main types of market research: primary and secondary.
Oh, is it like primary school versus secondary school?
That's a good way to think about it, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So primary research is all about collecting brand new data specifically designed to address your research question.
Okay.
It's like going straight to the source.
Gotcha. So it's fresh data.
Exactly.
New stuff.
Yeah. And this could involve conducting surveys, interviews, focus groups, or even running experiments.
Okay.
Think about that ice cream company wanting to create a new flavor for kids, right? They might do focus groups with kids to understand what flavors they like, what kind of names and packaging appeal to them, even how they describe their dream ice cream.
Oh, that's so cool.
Right. So that's primary research in action.
So if I wanted to know what kind of music podcast listeners prefer while they're working, I need to do some primary research.
You got it.
Cool. You could create a survey specifically for podcast listeners, asking them about their music preferences while they work.
Awesome.
Now, secondary research, on the other hand, relies on information that already exists.
Okay, so someone else has already done the legwork.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of taking advantage of their hard work.
Exactly.
Not bad.
It can be a great way to get a broad overview of a market or topic without having to collect all the data yourself.
Okay, so it's often more like cost-effective and time-efficient
Right.
than primary research.
But sometimes you need that fresh, targeted data that only primary research can provide.
Makes sense.
Now, I know you mentioned some Norwegian text in your sources, in limp text.
Yes.
And I see it dives into kvalitative og kvantitative undersøkelser, or qualitative and quantitative research?
Yeah, I was actually hoping you could break those down for us.
Oh, sure.
They sound a little intimidating. Yeah, I know those terms can sound a bit intimidating,
Yeah.
but they're really not that complicated.
Okay, good.
They're just fancy ways of saying exploring deeper versus measuring and counting.
Okay, so like quality versus quantity, almost.
Yeah, you could think about it that way.
Right.
Remember that ice cream company we were talking about?
Yeah.
Well, the focus groups we mentioned, that's a great example of qualitative research.
Okay.
It's about understanding the why behind kids' ice cream preferences.
Okay.
What makes them tick? What are their underlying motivations?
So it's more about like getting into their heads
Exactly.
rather than just like counting how many prefer chocolate over vanilla.
Precisely.
Okay, that makes sense.
Quantitative research, on the other hand, is all about the numbers.
Right, so it's how MUCH do they like it,
Exactly.
as opposed to WHY, do they like it?
Exactly. So in this case, the ice cream company might conduct a large-scale survey asking kids to rate their preference for specific flavors or packaging designs.
They can get those hard numbers.
Yeah. Right. The goal is to get quantifiable data, numbers you can analyze statistically.
Okay, so qualitative is about understanding the why,
Yes.
and quantitative is about measuring the how much.
Yeah. You nailed it.
Perfect.
And both approaches are valuable.
Yeah, I could see how you would use both.
Sometimes you need to dig deep to understand the underlying motivations and emotions driving consumer behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Other times, you need hard numbers to back up your decisions.
Makes sense.
It really depends on what you're looking for.
Now, I know the in-lim text source
Right.
mentions several methods for conducting research.
Yeah.
Some of them are like pretty straightforward, like,
Yeah.
surveys and interviews.
Mm-hmm.
But one that caught my eye was Observathon,
Oh, right.
which I guess involves like watching people
It does, yeah.
in their natural environment or in like controlled settings.
Mm-hmm.
There are even different types of observation,
There are.
overt and
Yeah.
covert, as well as in künstliche natürliche Milieu, which I believe is artificial or natural settings.
That's right, yeah.
Can you kind of walk us through what those are?
Of course, yeah. So let's start with overt versus covert observation.
Okay.
Overt observation is when people know they're being observed.
Gotcha.
So think about those usability studies where you watch someone interact with a website and ask them to think aloud as they go.
So like kind of like a one-way mirror situation.
Exactly.
They know you're watching, but you're not directly interacting.
Precisely.
Okay, covert is probably the opposite then.
Yeah. Covert observation, on the other hand, is when people don't know they're being observed.
Oh, wow.
And this is where things can get ethically tricky and need to be handled carefully.
Yeah, for sure.
For example, observing shoppers in a store without their knowledge raises privacy concerns.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that could cross a line.
It can, yeah.
So what about the difference between observing people in a natural versus an artificial environment?
Observing people in their natural environment, like a park or a shopping mall,
Mm-hmm.
can provide valuable insights into their real-world behavior.
Right.
You're seeing them in their element, interacting with products and services in a way that feels authentic.
Totally.
But sometimes researchers create artificial environments to control certain variables and observe how people react to specific stimuli.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, for example, a company might create a mock-up of a store to test different layouts or product displays.
So you're like manufacturing the environment
Yeah,
to get specific data.
right.
Makes sense.
It really does depend on what you're trying to study.
So you figured out what type of research you want to do.
Yeah,
You've chosen your method.
yeah.
You're all set to start gathering data.
Okay.
But do you really have to talk to every single person in your target market?
Thankfully,
Because that sounds exhausting.
it would be.
And that's where Utfolg or sampling comes in.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So,
In limbed text mentions terms like population, sample, and sampling methods.
can you break those down for us?
Absolutely.
I'm sure our listeners were wondering the same thing.
So imagine you're launching a new energy drink and want to understand the preferences of college students.
Okay, so college students is my target market.
Right. The entire group of college students you're interested in is your population.
The population.
But it's usually impossible, not to mention incredibly time-consuming, to gather data from every single college student.
I was going to say, good luck with that.
Yeah.
So you got to narrow it down somehow.
Right. So instead, you select a smaller group, called a sample
Okay.
that accurately represents that larger population.
So you're basically creating a mini version of your target market.
Exactly.
Alex.
A well-chosen sample allows you to make inferences about the larger population without having to talk to every single person.
Much easier, I would think.
Yeah, but how you choose that sample is crucial.
Okay.
And that's where sampling methods come in. There are two main types: probability sampling and non-probability sampling.
And what's the difference between the two?
In probability sampling, everyone in the population has an equal chance of being selected.
Okay.
It's like drawing names out of a hat.
Right.
Everyone has a fair shot.
So everyone has an equal chance of being in the study.
Exactly. This allows you to make generalizations about the entire population based on the findings from your sample.
That's cool.
Non-probability sampling, on the other hand, doesn't guarantee that everyone has an equal chance of being selected.
Okay.
So it's more about convenience or specific criteria.
So you might have a reason for choosing certain people?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Imagine you're doing a quick survey on campus and just stop people as they walk by.
Yeah, like a man on the street kind of thing.
That's a convenience sample.
Gotcha.
You're not necessarily getting a perfectly representative sample of the entire student body.
But you might get some interesting data.
Right, it might be sufficient for your research question.
So probability sampling is more rigorous.
It is.
But non-probability can be useful if you need, like, quick insights.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, I know in-limp text mentions Tinjin's Internet, IoT.
The Internet of Things.
And that might sound a bit out of left field.
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's actually incredibly relevant to market research.
Wait, what does the Internet of Things have to do with market research?
Well, the Internet of Things is all about everyday objects being connected to the internet and exchanging data.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
So like
Yeah,
my fitness tracker sending data to my phone.
exactly. But now imagine a smart refrigerator that tracks your grocery consumption.
Oh, wow.
Right. That data can tell companies a lot about your eating habits, brand preferences, even how often you go grocery shopping.
Wow, that's kind of mind-blowing.
And that's just one example.
Yeah, but also a little bit creepy.
It can be.
I mean, if my fridge is spying on me, who owns that information?
That's a really important question.
And how is it being used?
And it highlights the fact that even though this technology is incredible,
Yeah.
there are some big ethical and privacy questions we need to consider as we move towards a more connected world.
So it's kind of like the more data we have,
Mm-hmm.
the more questions we have.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So lots to unpack there.
Lots to unpack.
But it definitely sounds like the future of market research is going to be very interesting.
It definitely is.
We've only just scratched the surface here.
Yeah, just the beginning.
But I think you can see how much potential there is for gathering truly insightful data.
Absolutely.
So before the break, we were talking about the Internet of Things and all the data it generates.
Right.
I have to admit, it's fascinating,
Yeah.
but also a little unnerving to think about how much information companies could gather about our everyday lives.
It definitely raises some important questions
I'm sure.
about data privacy and ownership.
Yeah.
But let's step back for a second
Okay.
and remember that even with all these new tools and technologies, the fundamental principles of good market research, those stay the same.
Okay, so remind me, what are those fundamental principles?
Well, for starters, it's crucial to remember that market research isn't just about collecting data.
Mm-hmm.
It's about asking the right questions.
Right, getting the right data,
Exactly.
not just any data.
Remember that Henry Ford quote we talked about earlier?
Yeah, the faster horses.
If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses.
Right,
It highlights the fact that sometimes people don't know what they want,
right.
or they can't articulate their needs in a way that leads to true innovation.
So it's not always about giving people what they say they want,
No.
but about understanding like their underlying needs and desires.
Exactly. It's about identifying those unmet needs
Okay,
that customers themselves might not even be aware of.
right, like what they need but don't even know they need yet.
Exactly.
I like that.
Think about it this way.
Yeah.
If you were a company making horse-drawn carriages back in the early 1900s,
Okay, so we're back in the horse and buggy days.
you might have focused on making your carriages faster, more comfortable, or more stylish.
Right, make a better horse-drawn carriage.
But you probably wouldn't have thought to invent the automobile.
The car.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It makes you wonder,
It does.
what are we asking for today that's just a slightly better version of something that already exists,
Mhm.
when we could be dreaming up something entirely new?
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought.
It is, and it underscores the importance of using market research not just to validate existing ideas,
Right.
but to generate truly innovative solutions.
They come up with something totally new.
Exactly.
I like that.
Now, going back to the idea of a marketing information system, or MIS,
Okay, definitely yes, yeah.
one of the sources you provided emphasizes how valuable a well-designed MIS can be for making smart marketing decisions.
And earlier you were talking about how a good MIS uses both internal and external information. Can you give us some more concrete examples of how companies might use those different types of information to make better decisions?
Absolutely. Let's take the example of a company that makes athletic wear.
Okay. Athletic wear, I like it. Very relevant.
Internally, they might track their sales data to see which items are selling well and which ones are lagging behind.
Okay, so that internal data gives them a snapshot of what's working and what's not.
Exactly.
Oh,
But then they can combine that internal data with external information like reports on fitness trends,
yeah.
competitor analysis, and even social media conversations about fitness and fashion.
So they can see what their competitors are up to,
Exactly.
what people are talking about online.
This broader perspective can help them anticipate future trends, identify new opportunities.
So it's about connecting the dots between what's happening inside the company
Yes,
and what's happening in the larger world.
precisely.
Okay, cool.
A good MIS helps companies move away from intuition or guesswork
Right, so it's all about data-driven decisions.
towards more strategic, data-driven decision-making.
Love it. Data is king.
Data is king.
Now, one thing that jumped out at me from InLink Text, the Norwegian source,
Mm-hmm.
was the discussion of different sampling methods.
Right.
It seems like choosing the right sampling method is really important
It is, yeah.
for making sure your research results are accurate and reliable.
Absolutely.
Can you walk us through some of those methods
Sure.
and explain when you might choose one over another?
Of course. Let's start with probability sampling, which we touched on earlier.
Okay.
One common type of probability sampling is simple random sampling.
Okay, simple random sampling. Pretty straightforward.
Remember the example of drawing names out of a hat?
Yeah, the classic hat draw.
That's simple random sampling in action.
Makes sense.
Everyone in the population has an equal chance of being selected,
Equal chance.
which makes it a good choice when you want a representative sample of a clearly defined population.
Okay, so pretty straightforward.
Now, what about Klingetvalg or cluster sampling?
Cluster sampling.
I saw that mentioned in the Norwegian text, too.
Yeah, I was wondering about that one.
Cluster sampling is useful when your population is naturally divided into groups or clusters.
Okay.
Let's say you're a researcher studying the effectiveness of a new teaching method in high schools across a large city.
Okay, high school's in a big city,
Instead of trying to randomly select students from every single high school,
which would be a lot.
which would be a logistical nightmare,
Yeah, I can imagine.
you could randomly select a few high schools, your clusters,
Okay.
and then randomly select students within those schools to participate in your study.
So you're creating smaller, more manageable groups within the larger population.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm following.
This can be a lot more practical and cost-effective
Right.
than trying to reach individuals scattered across a wide geographical area.
Makes sense.
Now let's talk about non-probability sampling.
Right. Non-probability.
InLinked text mentions bekvemmelighetsutvalg, or convenience sampling.
Convenience sampling. I feel like I know where this is going.
As the name suggests, it's all about selecting participants based on who's readily available and willing to participate.
Okay.
So, if you were doing a survey on campus and just stopped people who walked by,
Exactly.
that would be convenience sampling.
I knew it.
It's quick and easy,
It is.
but it doesn't guarantee a representative sample of the entire student body.
Right. You might end up just talking to, like, whoever happens to be walking by at that moment.
You might end up talking to a lot of people from one particular major or people who happen to be in a certain area at a certain time.
Right. You're not necessarily getting a diverse cross-section of the entire population.
Exactly.
Okay.
Finally, InLinked text mentions kvotvalg, or quota sampling.
Sub-quotient.
This method involves setting quotas for certain characteristics like age, gender, or income
Okay.
to make sure your sample reflects the proportions of those characteristics in the larger population.
So if you know that your target market is 60% female,
Yes.
you'd make sure 60% of your sample is female as well.
Precisely, it can be useful when you want to make sure certain subgroups are represented,
Okay.
but it's still a non-probability method, so generalizability to the entire population is limited.
Gotcha. So it's not perfect, but it can be useful in certain situations.
Exactly.
So it sounds like choosing the right sampling method really depends on a lot of factors,
It does.
like your research goals, your budget, and how important it is to be able to generalize your findings to the larger population.
You got it. And it's just one of the many decisions that market researchers have to make when designing a study.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about.
From choosing the right questions to selecting the right method,
Right.
every step of the process needs to be carefully considered
Right.
to ensure you're gathering accurate and insightful data.
That's what it's all about, right?
It is.
Getting the right data.
Speaking of insightful data,
Yeah.
I want to circle back to the Internet of Things, or IoT.
IoT, yeah, let's talk
Yeah.
about that some more.
This idea of everyday objects being connected to the internet and generating data is incredibly exciting,
It is.
but also a little bit unsettling.
It is. It's a little bit of both.
It definitely is.
We talked about, like the potential downsides,
Mhm.
but I'm also really curious to hear more about the potential applications of IoT data in market research.
Okay.
What are some of the ways companies might use this data to better understand their customers?
Well, imagine a world where products are designed and marketed based on real-time data about how people are actually using them.
Okay.
Your coffee maker learns your brewing preferences
Oh, that would be nice.
and adjusts automatically.
My coffee is never quite right.
Your running shoes track your gait and suggest personalized training plans.
Oh, that's cool.
Your car anticipates your needs
Oh, wow.
and seamlessly integrates with your digital life.
Okay, now that sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, right?
It's amazing.
It's a world of hyper-personalization, where products and services are tailored to our individual needs and desires.
But I can't help but think about the potential downsides.
Of
Or
course.
like, what happens to privacy in a world where every single interaction with a product generates data?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
As we become more reliant on these hyper-personalized products and services, we need to make sure we're not sacrificing our privacy and autonomy in the process.
That's a good point. There's got to be a balance.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
Sure.
It feels like we're on the cusp of something really big here.
We are.
The possibilities are exciting,
They are.
but the potential risks are real.
It's a delicate balance.
It's a delicate balance.
But I believe that if we approach it thoughtfully and responsibly,
Yeah.
we can harness the power of data to create a future where technology truly serves humanity.
I like that. Okay, we're back for the final part of our market research deep dive.
It's been a great conversation so far.
It really has.
We've covered a lot.
We've talked about so much. The power of information, asking the right questions.
Yeah.
And even like the future of market research with the Internet of Things.
Right, the IoT.
But before we go,
Mm-hmm.
I want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay, I like that.
Throughout this whole deep dive, we've been talking about one key idea,
Okay,
market research,
yeah.
is really about understanding people.
People, that's it.
It's about figuring out what they want, what they need, their motivations.
Sometimes those desires are super clear.
Right? They can just tell you,
Like, give me that ice cream flavor.
I need a faster horse-drawn carriage.
Exactly.
But sometimes those desires are hidden,
Yeah, they are.
like beneath the surface.
People might not even be aware of them.
And that's where things get interesting.
It is.
That's where the innovation happens.
The really exciting stuff.
And we've seen how traditional methods, like surveys and interviews, can be really powerful
Yeah, they are.
for figuring out those hidden needs.
Right.
But technology's changing so fast.
It is.
And with the Internet of Things,
The IoT, yeah.
we're entering a whole new world of data.
A whole new era of data collection.
Imagine a world where products
Okay.
are designed and marketed based on real-time data
Okay.
about how people are using them.
Wow.
So your coffee maker knows exactly how you like your coffee
Okay.
and brews it perfectly every time.
That would be nice.
You don't even have to lift a finger.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Your running shoes,
Yeah.
they analyze your gait,
Okay.
suggest a personalized training plan.
Wow, so high tech.
Your car anticipates your needs,
Okay.
connects you to the world around you.
Now that sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It really does, but it's coming.
It's incredible.
It's the future.
It's crazy to think about.
But, I mean, all this data,
Yeah.
it makes me think about, like, what happens to privacy?
You're right. That's a big question.
In a world where everything is connected, everything we do
Yeah.
generates data.
Big questions about data privacy.
Is it really serving us
Mm-hmm.
if it's also constantly watching us?
That's the million-dollar question.
It really is.
It is, for sure.
So as we move towards this future
Yeah.
of hyper-personalization and constant connectivity.
It's exciting and a little scary.
It's both, for sure.
Yeah.
We got to ask ourselves,
Okay, what's the question?
how can we use this technology
Yeah.
to empower people
Empower people. Okay.
rather than, like, exploit them?
Right. That's important.
How can we make sure that data is used ethically,
Ethically, yes.
responsibly,
Hmm.
to create a world that actually benefits everyone?
Those are the questions we need to be asking.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, it really is.
Finding those answers. It's going to shape the future
It is.
of not just market research,
Right?
but society as a whole.
It really will.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
I'm so glad we could dive into this topic.
Me too.
I hope this is giving you a lot to think about.
A lot to consider.
And as always,
Mm-hmm.
keep exploring.